What is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to VeVe Investments. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about different structures that you can build inside of in the VeVeVerse. So if you guys are interested, make sure to stay tuned. We discuss 13 in this episode. Now, one thing we've heard a lot about recently is how the resolution of our collectibles look better in the VeVeVerse. But another thing that's come to light in recent weeks is that beta testers have now figured out that you can build inside structures like the Avengers Tower, which is why it spiked in price a few weeks back. So today we're talking about different structures that you can grab in the marketplace to use as different environments in the VeVeVerse. So with that being said, we're discussing 13, so let's kick things off with the first one. So from my understanding, a lot of these collectibles are going to be hollow, meaning you're going to have to place solid structures within them in order to move around them. So in this case, the Avengers Tower is going to be a great example of this, and you can do lots with it. So you are going to have three different components to the base. You're going to have the bottom section, the middle section, and then the top part of the base. And what you can do is you can add floors to each one of them. So you can have three large rooms right there that you can break down into different things. If you move to the main section of the tower, so this is where you could add different levels, and each level could pertain to something specific. So you could have vehicles on one, you could have art on the other. I have also only been talking about the inside of the structure right now. So if you look at the outside of the base, you do also have like little balcony areas that you can build. So you can have like 20 different levels inside the structure alone, but there are many other places you can still build. So if you actually look outside, you have the helipad, right? So I'm probably going to place my X-Wing there. You have many different walkways as well. You actually have 4 different platforms still at the top with room to build. Again, maybe you want to build some balconies over there. And then right where the A is positioned, it's attached to like this beam of light that wraps around the building. And I have some ideas with mini games for that alone. Maybe last one standing wins. Maybe you want to continue it so that it hits the ground, and that you want to position 2 wheels with a motorcycle, maybe the James Bond bike, and you have to drive it up the really narrow beam. Now, I think we're going to see a ton of unique things created with this piece. So, VeVe, get on that second round of beta invites, will ya? So I'm going to try and start running through these a little quicker now. I want to avoid being repetitive in this video. But we now have the house from Up. So I'm not entirely sure if this one's going to have like walls and everything inside of it, but I can picture breaking it down into 4 different rooms. So you have the room right behind the front door, you have the living room to the right of the front door, then you have a room above the front door, and then a room above the living room. Now I am looking at this thing on my desktop right now, and it is tripping out on me. All the balloons are pink for some reason. It hasn't fully rendered, or I don't know what's going on here, but you can also build inside the balloons. So you can create a fun little mini game with that alone. But yeah, that's going to be the second one on today's list. So next up, we got a piece that we've seen a lot of in the showroom, and that is going to be the Borg Cube. So I picture this being used in 2 ways. Fully immersing yourself inside the cube, almost using it like a skybox. And then the second way would be if you're trying to create some sort of steampunk environment, and you want to use the Borg Cube as almost like a texture on the wall to mimic pipes and things like that. Now, I'm actually noticing right now, I don't know why I didn't notice this before, but all the green little lights coming off of it. I never picked that up, but I can also see that being used as a form of a texture. Maybe if you raise it high enough in the sky, you fully enlarge it, then you have like a darker environment, maybe you have the fog toggled on, you can mimic stars with the lights on this. So that could be another application. So next up on the list, we got a Star Wars piece, and that is going to be the Scythe. It's funny to look at pieces like this because the first thing that comes to mind is if the current studio that VeVe was working with actually made this piece, it would be fully animated. For those that don't know, VeVe changed the studio that they were working with, or one of them at least, and I'd assume that this one was created from the older one, especially when you compare it to ships like Vader's shuttle that just dropped. But regardless, you are going to have space inside this ship to build as well, and to be honest, I don't really have much more to mention there because, well, I mean, that's really the only space you can build. Now, this ship does also have a lot of jagged edges, so I can see this ship being used almost as like a ramp in a race. So if you submerge the ship to the base of whatever they're racing at, you could be racing and hit the back part as a ramp. or you can even use the side panels as ramps if you turn it on its side. So next on the list, we are sticking with the theme of ships, but this time Battlestar Galactica. So this one is quite interesting because there is a lot you can do with this one. There is a big open spot in the center of it. So you're going to have the middle part, you're going to have the front cockpit, but then also the sides of this thing have little narrow tunnels. So you can build within those as well. They do have openings on either end. So speaking of races, I do see this piece being used for something like that as well, where the vehicles can race right through it like a tunnel. But if you fully enlarge the piece and make it very, very big, I can also see it being used as just a large building block of a larger, structure, where you have a bunch of like default shapes and everything around it. Next up, we are heading to Sesame Street. We got Cookie Monster's oven. So this would be a piece that I would be talking about using kind of similar to a skybox. So fully enlarge it and create a full world inside of the oven. Now, I think in this case, most people would just be looking at the part that opens, but the two drawers on the right and left-hand side, I'm sure you could probably build inside of those as well. Whether you can open them or not, that's a whole other question. Next up, we got the Romulan Warbird. So I see this being used in a couple ways. So first, I actually see this being used as a sky bar. So I'm not sure if you guys see what I see, but that little control panel can be used as a bar, and then you can place chairs and place it high up in the sky. And then I do also see this being used as a building block in multiple ways. So the first way would be if you submerge the vehicle so that only the top part is showing, you can use it almost like a ramp to a higher structure. Or you can use the ship itself as like a centerpiece where multiple ramps lead up to it. So you'd have 2 ramps leading up to the back part and then 2 ramps leading up to the front part. And then the ship is kind of used as like that intersection for the map. I think that this is going to be a piece where, although it looks simple, there's going to be a lot that you're going to be able to do with it. So next up, we're going to have 2 trucks. We're going to have Deadpool's Chimichangas truck, and then we're going to have the Coca-Cola truck. So first up, let's start with Deadpool. You're going to have 2 main sections of the truck, the front and the back. But I do also see this being used as almost like a wallpaper for the room, the back part. Or the other side where the sign is, I see it being used as kind of like the front of a restaurant. So the truck isn't a perfect square. It's actually more narrow at the base than it is at the top. So if I'm thinking about this right, what you should be able to do is push it against a wall, and the tire section of the truck should hide behind the wall before the rest of the sign actually disappears. So you can make it look like an actual sign, and people won't even know that it's a truck. So if you head over to the Coca-Cola truck, you're going to have the same thing, 2 main sections, the front and the back. And then again, I don't want to get too repetitive here, but in a similar way to the Chimichangas truck, you can use this one as some form of wallpaper. Oh, and actually, correction, I actually think there are 3 sections to this truck. There's the sleeping cabin above the driver. So next up, we're heading back to Star Trek, but this time we got the USS Enterprise, and I have no idea why this thing is spinning the way that it is on the web app, but that's so weird. Anyways, I do see this being used in a couple ways as well. You're gonna have 2 main sections you can build inside of. You're gonna have the main disc part, and then you're gonna have the rear section. And then in a similar way to the Romulan, where if you submerge this and use it as a building block, you can use the disc part almost like a base for another mini game, kind of like a King of the Hill maybe. There's a bunch of stuff that you can do with this one, and there are going to be lights that you can utilize on it as well. Now, if you don't want to submerge it and you want to have the whole thing showing, you can also flip it upside down, use the base the same way, but then you also have kind of like a little section where I'm not sure if you guys can see what I'm talking about, but there's like almost like a little viewing area, and you can use that as a balcony where the thrusters are. Next up, we have the Cylon Basestar from Battlestar Gallatica, and this one can be used to build inside of, but also as a building block as well. So you're going to have the top section and the bottom section to build inside of, but in terms of a building block, you can use it almost like a bridge. So each walkway can be used to connect to something else, and if you set it up and use it properly, this piece can almost be used as like a building block for modern architecture, where if you have a bunch of default shapes and buildings around it, you probably couldn't even tell that it's a ship. So because of its unique shape, I think this one could be used in many ways. So next on the list, we are going to have the green torso, and this is a relatively new piece on the app. And I actually see this piece being used in a couple different ways, both static and animated. So again, just a little reminder, you can pause animations in the VeVeVerse. So let's say, for example, you do pause his animation where he's opening his chest. You can build a ramp up inside and then build a whole world and environment inside his chest. If you guys have ever seen those little Lego worlds that are built inside walls of homes, that's kind of where I got the idea from. The way that I see it being used while the animation is playing is during a race. So it does lift its head on and off, and that can be used as an obstacle where the ramp goes right through it and you have to race through it at the right time. I do also believe you can speed up and slow down animations. So if the animation is too slow, then you can always speed it up so it's just constantly going up and down. And actually, speaking of which, you can do the same thing with the chest. And so we are going to round the video off with some honorable mentions. I was actually going to mention one more point, but I think I'm going to add the Infinity Stones with what you guys see on screen. So the Infinity Stones are going to be gems where you can enlarge them and use them kind of like skyboxes and build entire worlds inside of them. We're also going to have the ATST, and then we're going to have Darth Vader's TIE Fighter and Shuttle. So all three of these are going to be vehicles that have space to build inside. It's just that the space is a little bit more limited. So I thought that the ones on today's list were just worth mentioning first. And then one more that comes to mind now that I think about it is going to be the Coca-Cola ball. So in a similar way to the Infinity Stones, you can enlarge that and use that as a skybox as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. Those are going to be a variety of collectibles you guys can grab in the secondary market to build inside of or use as building blocks in the VeVeVerse. Now, it is getting quite difficult to keep track of everything on the app, so if I did miss any, make sure to comment them down below. I'm sure I probably did. And then that'll always be helpful for, the people that are always looking for more. Now, I will also be changing the branding for the channel. This has been on my mind for several months now, and there are several reasons why I'm doing it, but I will be creating a longer video to explain all that. It's just something you guys can expect in the coming weeks. But if you guys enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. And as for next, I'll catch you then.